Welcome to part 2. In the last part, we saw some fairly significant red flags from Mao. Let's continue with the second clip.
Babe, can you behave yourself? You don't get to be the bad guy.
Maybe someone has to be the bad guy.
Yeah, not.
Otherwise, people can't define themselves. They'll just be lost.
Okay. Please, we had one deal.
Okay, I will. Yes, you had a deal. I will try.
Many victims of a narcissist will have experienced having to plead and bargain with the narcissist not to make a scene at a particular event. Could that be what's happening here, with Annie asking Mao to behave himself and not to be the bad guy, even saying, "Please, we had one deal"? Mao, for his part, seems quite comfortable with the idea of being the bad guy, saying that maybe someone has to be, otherwise people can't define themselves. Is this a sign that he's quite a disagreeable person, who's willing to be provocative in his actions without really caring about how it makes him look? This would be a red flag for a particular type of narcissist that doesn't create the facade of being a good person, and as a result is often happy to provoke people in a negative way to receive an emotional reaction from them, known as fuel.
Up until very recently, if he were to sort of tell you the story of our intimate life, he would say that we're totally incompatible, and that we have
sexually incompatible.
Yes, that we're sexually incompatible, especially in terms of appetite. And
What's the incompatibility?
Well, like I never wanted, he always wants it.
Sex is a big indicator when it comes to narcissists. One way or another, there is often something unusual about the way a narcissist behaves when it comes to sex. For example, some narcissists will be hypersexualized, perhaps demanding an extremely high frequency, or sleeping with everything that moves. This is partly because sex is a very powerful weapon that allows them to control others and to gain very emotional reactions from them, which provides the narcissist with fuel. But there are other ways in which it can manifest. For example, some narcissists will withdraw sex from their partner and reject intimacy as a way to devalue them and to draw a negative emotional reaction from them, known as negative fuel. So this piece of information that Annie and Mao have very different sexual appetites has piqued my interest. Of course, there are many reasons why partners could have issues with sex beyond narcissism. For example, low or high sex drives, stress, medical issues, feeling underappreciated, a lack of sexual attraction, a lack of emotional connection, etc. And I need to make clear that somebody having unusual sexual behavior certainly doesn't mean they're a narcissist. Everybody differs from the norm in some aspects of their lives, and that's not an issue. Instead, what we're looking for is a pattern of behavior across many different aspects of somebody's life. And that's why I keep saying that each piece of information we receive is simply a small piece of the puzzle, and never determinative.
Well, like I never wanted, he always wants it.
I view sex in a lot of ways. I see it like eating and like sleeping. I have to do it every day. So the idea that like you had sex yesterday is sort of like saying you ate yesterday. I appreciate that. I'm glad I ate yesterday, but today's today. But I didn't approach her like this, like, hey, it's scheduled. Like none of that.
Yeah, you did.
Wait, I want to get to the essence.
I really didn't.
Okay.
And I don't even view it that way. The way I think about it is that actually just makes great sense. It's what you're supposed to do. It's what my body wants to do, and I am in agreement with my body. Like we agree on this completely. I don't see how anyone can disagree with it. Like I don't even understand the idea like I don't want to. It doesn't even make sense to me. I'm like, something's clearly wrong with you.
Sex is important to many people in a relationship, and a lack of sex can be a big issue. But that doesn't seem to be what Mao's talking about here. He's describing his need to have sex every single day. And he seems to have very little understanding for anyone with a different preference to him on this, saying, it's what you're supposed to do. And then, I don't see how anyone can disagree with that. Like, I don't even understand the idea, like, I don't want to. It doesn't even make sense to me. I'm like, something's clearly wrong with you. Could this be another example of what seems to be emerging as a pattern in Mao's behavior? He has his idea of how things should be, and anyone who doesn't agree with that is dismissed. Something's clearly wrong with you. This is showing haughtiness, a sense of entitlement, and a lack of empathy and understanding for people who may have valid reasons or just a personal preference for not wanting to have sex every single day. When he says, "I don't even understand the idea," like "I don't want to, it doesn't even make sense to me," could this be an indication that Mao has an issue accepting other people's boundaries? Finally, Mao putting such a high importance on having frequent sex, even saying that he views sex like the biological imperatives of eating and sleeping, is another piece of evidence pointing us in the direction of hypersexuality.
Look, there's a big part of me that really, and has for many years, told him to fuck off. And told him, like, this is impossible. You're not asking for anything, but you're asking for sex 3 times a day. What do you mean you're not asking for anything? You know, I'm a person who has to, you know. Anyway, if you had met us 10 years ago, I would have said that I thought he had a sex addiction. And that I thought his relationship to sex and sexuality was disordered. I mean, that's how we ended up here and now.
So according to Annie, Mao was wanting to have sex 3 times a day, and she thought he had a sex addiction. We have to bear in mind that this information is coming from Annie, but I get the feeling it's probably not too far from the reality of the situation. Firstly, it fits in with the preoccupation Mao has shown with sex in this part and in the last part. And secondly, Mao has previously seemed to jump in and vehemently deny anything that he perceives not to be correct about him, and he doesn't show any sign of resistance here. This is therefore more evidence pointing us in the direction of Mao's hypersexuality. Of course, as with any individual behaviour, hypersexuality by itself wouldn't mean that Mao's a narcissist. But hypersexuality is something that often manifests in narcissists, so it would make it more likely that he is a narcissist. As I always say, we need to look at the specifics of the situation. Earlier, when Annie said, "I never want it and he always wants it," we didn't have enough context to really say anything. For example, it could have been the case that Mao was wanting sex once a month, and Annie was resisting it. But now we know the context, we have to ask ourselves whether asking your partner for sex 3 times a day is reasonable, especially when they're showing strong resistance to it. And does Mao's earlier position of, "I don't even understand the idea of I don't want to, something's clearly wrong with you," apply to not wanting to have sex 3 times a day? If so, that would clearly be a red flag, showing a lack of empathy and boundaries.
I thought that was like the beginning and the end of our stuff.
How do you mean?
Like if sex was good, life was good, and if sex was bad, life was bad. Not coming from me, coming from him.
This is a big red flag. It sounds like the behaviour of a narcissist. If Annie didn't go along with Mao's seemingly very high sexual expectations, life was bad. In a relationship with a narcissist, this would occur because the narcissist's partner saying no to sex is showing that they're not under control. They therefore become painted black, viewed through a negative lens by the narcissist, and are given a corrective devaluation to bring them back under control, punish them for their transgression, and to draw a negative emotional reaction from them, known as negative fuel. Is it possible that Mao could carry out this behaviour if he wasn't a narcissist? Yes, nobody likes feeling rejected, and non-narcissists can react negatively to that too. But I think a sustained negative reaction like this would be very unlikely. A non-narcissist would generally recognise that asking for sex multiple times a day was a high expectation, and it's unreasonable to get upset and take it out on their partner for saying no to this. Behaving otherwise shows a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, and an inability to respect the boundaries of one's partner.
Like if sex was good, life was good, and if sex was bad, life was bad. Not coming from me, coming from him.
You don't want to be okay with not doing it. That is not a sign of health. That's a sign of something else. And so you want to, and I want to fix that, and I want to encourage it. So a lot of my encouragement, I'm not great at encouraging, I guess. It was interpreted a very different way. But
as pressure?
I think certainly easily as pressure, but also it could maybe even even more than pressure, could be almost viewed negatively.
And you often misinterpreted gestures as manipulation, as a sexual manipulation? That's
Definitely.
what would happen?
Yes. Pressure felt like pressure,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see it as anything else.
Both Annie and Mal say that his behaviour felt like pressure to Annie. Could it be that Mal didn't realise his behaviour was being interpreted as pressure by Annie? I think it's very unlikely. Annie has already told us that they had problems because she didn't want the same frequency of sex as Mal, and even that she told Mal to fuck off for many years. So if Mal knew that his behaviour was being interpreted as pressure, whether he intended it to be or not, continuing with that behaviour for seemingly years is telling. It shows a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, a lack of boundaries, a lack of accountability for his role as Annie's partner, and controlling and manipulative behaviour. But perhaps Mal feels genuine contrition for having behaved like that in the past, and in discussing how his behaviour was interpreted as pressure by Annie so openly, he's taking accountability for his past actions. However, I don't believe that's the case. Firstly, he still doesn't think that he was wrong in trying to persuade Annie to comply with his extremely high sexual desires. He still has an uncompromising attitude, saying, "You don't want to be okay with not doing it. That is not a sign of health. That's a sign of something else, and I want to fix that." His way is the right way, and Annie's is the wrong way, which needs to be fixed, despite him being the one with desires that are outside the typical range within a relationship. This shows his sense of entitlement and lack of empathy, and it shows that Mal doesn't see anything wrong with the motives for his past actions. But what about the way that he did it? The pressure that he made Annie feel? Surely he regrets that. Well, he actually says that he was encouraging Annie, but that this was interpreted in a very different way. He's not taking any accountability, and is euphemizing his actions as trying to do something positive, encouragement, despite almost certainly knowing full well at the time that Annie was interpreting his behaviour as pressure. Notice the blame shifting. It was Annie interpreting it as pressure, not his fault for applying the pressure. This is manipulative as well as a rejection of accountability. So Mal's downplaying his responsibility, which means that he isn't owning up to it. And yet another good reason to think that Mal isn't taking accountability is that he shows zero contrition, guilt, or even embarrassment. He says in such an open, matter-of-fact, almost upbeat way that his behaviour was viewed, quote, "I think certainly, easily as pressure, but also maybe even more than pressure. It could almost be viewed negatively." And I don't think that this openness and straightforwardness is coming from a place of Mal having long accepted that what he did was wrong, and having made it up with Annie and apologised profusely for it. It's coming from a place where he doesn't even recognise that he did anything wrong. That seems to be why he's so happy to say this so brazenly, that he simply isn't capable of understanding or caring how a statement like that is going to be interpreted by others. That putting your partner through decades of more than pressure is not something that has a good ring to it. This would once again point us strongly in the direction of Mal being a lesser narcissist. That is, a narcissist that lacks a strong ability to think things through from other people's perspectives. In other words, lacking cognitive empathy as well as emotional empathy.
When we sort of came to blows a couple of years ago,
Around the birthday thing?
yeah, I was just like, I don't want to be fucking held responsible for this anymore. Like, I don't want to, I don't think it's fair to him at all.
So even after Mal had just flown to Italy at the last minute, instead of attending the sex-related birthday party that she planned for him, and after years of sexual pressure that she had felt from him, part of Annie's reason for finally having had enough of trying to fulfill Mal's sexual appetite was supposedly that she didn't think it was fair to him. If this is true, it would certainly point away from Annie being a narcissist, because it would demonstrate emotional empathy and understanding as well as guilt, which is tied in with emotional empathy. But we need to take it with a pinch of salt. It's very possible, for example, that a mid-range narcissist would say something like this as a manipulation to show what a good and kind person they are. Of course, in that case, it would just be the facade of being a good person, and the narcissist would eventually reveal themselves over time through their actions. As with identifying whether somebody's a narcissist, there's virtually no single action that could unequivocally reveal somebody to be a non-narcissist. Saying a few nice things doesn't mean somebody's a nice person. It's not as easy as that. We have to observe their behavior over a period of time.
And there was a lot of years where I defended myself and I defended my position and I accused him of all kinds of behavior from a very defensive place.
This could show Annie taking accountability for what she perceives to be her contribution to the relationship issues, being defensive and accusing Mal of all types of behavior. On the face of it, this would be a green flag. Again, with the caveat that a mid-range narcissist can show fake accountability if required. Annie accusing Mal of all types of behavior could be a red flag, but we have to view it in the context of her receiving years of pressure from Mal to engage in sexual activities that are generally outside the needs of a partner in a relationship. And her accusations towards Mal are yet more evidence that Mal must have realized the negative effect his behavior was having on Annie during the years it persisted for.
And I do now really believe his intentions. I think you wanted to love me up all the time and be loved by me, and I downright couldn't.
Annie says that now she believes Mal's intentions, that he just wanted her sexually and she couldn't fulfill it. This seems to be quite an understanding, forgiving and empathetic response to being pressured into doing something she didn't want to for years. Could this be the self-blaming behavior of a narcissist's victim? Annie seems to be feeling guilty, taking accountability for reacting negatively, and ascribing the best of intentions to Mal, while he seemingly remains unrepentant.
The piece that really belongs here is that, like, my attraction to Annie was like biblical. I mean, it was unreal. I had a lot of relationships before you, and when I saw her, like, the world stopped. Like, everything stopped, and I was like, oh shit. Like, here's, like, you know, it's like, there's the one. That is the one. And this is going to sound terrible, but it's like, I want to fuck that for the rest of my life.
Mal says that he had a lot of relationships before Annie. This is a red flag. Many, although certainly not all narcissists, have had a lot of relationships. This is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, they're strongly driven by their narcissism to find a partner to provide them with their needs. Primarily emotional fuel, but also control, character traits to acquire, and residual benefits such as money, a place to stay, sex, etc. Secondly, when they are in a relationship, the narcissist's unreasonable behavior may cause their partner to leave. Or alternatively, after the partner enters sustained devaluation, the narcissist is at risk of disengaging, often with a new partner already set up waiting in the wings. As I keep saying though, this single red flag wouldn't mean that Mal is a narcissist. Non-narcissists can sometimes have many relationships too. Mal says that his attraction to Annie was biblical, and when he saw her he thought, this is the one, I want to fuck that for the rest of my life. It doesn't sound very romantic, and could be interpreted as a further red flag for hypersexuality. But I'll give Mal the benefit of the doubt, because this is a conversation specifically about sex, so it makes some sense that he would mention this here. Mal's statement about how the world stopped, everything stopped, and how he thought, there's the one, that is the one, could also be showing the strong infatuation a narcissist feels when they see a viable romantic target. You'll often hear narcissists say over-the-top statements such as, "the world stopped," or "it was love at first sight," or "an angel sent them to me," or "I knew they were the one." But I would say that statements like this are more minor red flags, because the depiction of love as almost some magical phenomenon has spread throughout society, and it wouldn't be too unusual to hear a non-narcissist say something like this.
Do you know what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, like, she had, and still has, like this incredible emotional attachment to life. Like, just this, like, the way she interacts with the world I don't do it that way. I don't see it that way. And I get to experience it.
Capacity to emotionally attach.
Oh yeah, to emotionally attach, but it's almost like she's, she's just plugged in on a different wavelength that's inaccessible to me. It seemed beautiful, and it seemed something I didn't exactly know was possible. We're very different. I feel like I'm forcing everything. Now I'm holding back the tidewaters. She looks like she's walking on top of it.
Is Mao describing genuine love for Annie, or is this the infatuation and idealization that a narcissist feels towards their partner at the beginning of the relationship, and then intermittently throughout the rest of the relationship? Could Mao's description of how Annie interacts differently to the world, in a beautiful way, as if she's plugged into a different wavelength to him, be an unaware narcissist attempting to describe the natural attraction and pull they feel towards an empath, towards the true inner strength and confidence that an empath can shine with, towards the ability an empath has to emotionally connect and to draw others in with genuine empathy and kindness? Things a narcissist will only ever be able to create a weak imitation of. That's the end of the clip. Let's examine where we are in terms of overall red flags for Annie and Mao. With Annie, I still haven't seen any major red flags. Once again, she appears to be showing empathy and accountability. I would say it's becoming pretty unlikely that she's a narcissist. On the other hand, Mao is continuing to show a wide range of different red flags, and we've added the final category, a lack of boundaries. I think it's highly likely that Mao is a narcissist, and actually a very obvious narcissist. Join me in the next part to see if we can confirm this. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to like, comment and subscribe.